Welcome back to UC University Apologetics Class 9, Christ and Culture. This is part 3. If you missed parts 1 and 2, please go back and see them on our YouTube page by searching Union Church Rio. Now we turn to Christ of Culture, copy and consume. Before we move on, I want to warn you about another view that some professing Christians have taken towards culture in the past. Some Christians have reacted against the Christ against culture view by taking the opposite view. They have argued that human culture is the primary means through which God reveals himself and the primary means through which we serve him. They would argue that we cannot learn about God except through human cultural artifacts like books, talking, and reading, and that we cannot serve God except through human cultural artifacts like godly families, societies, and nations. These Christians see no tension between Christ and the world. Rather, they believe that the Christian message is that God becomes wholly immanent in the world through our culture. It is therefore our duty to build an increasingly godly culture until we have literally built heaven on earth. The view that Christ will return and reign after we Christians have literally built his kingdom here on earth in this age. The Bible does not support this stance towards culture. D.A. Carson rightly notes that Christians who take this view of the world usually do so by distorting or ignoring large parts of the Bible. It is true that God's creation was originally good, and indeed he does reveal himself through all of creation. But the Christ of culture view overlooks the fall. This present creation is twisted and ruined and marred by sin. So I just want to warn you that as you think on how we as Christians relate to our surrounding culture, you may hear some argue that we should seek to shape our culture so completely that it becomes the embodiment of God's kingdom entirely and wholly within this world. This is an unbiblical view, and we need to remind ourselves that in this fallen world that we will never attain paradise. Let's move on now to some application. As we have seen, our response towards the cultures we encounter depends on what that culture says about God and his world. The following sessions are designed to help you interpret cultures so that you can respond appropriately. But it would be wrong to leave it at this, as if the point was simply to learn how to critique cultures rightly and have interesting things to say about books and movies. We should move beyond understanding culture, either condemning, critiquing, or praising it. We should eventually come to cultivate and create culture that glorifies God as an expression of true things about his creation. So next, Christ transforming culture. Cultivate and create culture. The Bible encourages us to actively participate in creating and cultivating good culture that reflects God's glory. We see this in work. The creation and cultivation of cultural goods is part of our purpose on earth. As we see in Genesis 2:15, the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and to take care of it. Before sin and the fall, God directed that man go to work. Work is not a punishment for sin or a part of the curse. It is part of what God made us for. In our work, we participate in shaping and crafting God's good design. Solomon commends work several times in Ecclesiastes. He says, "There is nothing better for a man than to enjoy his work. And whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might." When God gives any man wealth and possessions and enables him to enjoy them, to accept his lot and be happy in his work, this is a gift from God. Work is a gift from God, a blessing that he gives to us. As we saw earlier, God uses cultural artifacts to teach his people and to equip them to worship him. The tabernacle, the temple, and all the tools used in them were God-ordained cultural creations. He specifically gifted certain workmen with the wisdom and ability to create things that God has instructed. God even says that he filled him, one of the chief craftsmen, with the Spirit of God, with skill, ability, and knowledge in all kinds of crafts, including artistic designs. Skill in creating things to the glory of God can be one of God's purposes for us and one of the fruits of his Spirit in our lives, a far cry from automatically condemning all culture. The most direct way we can create culture to the glory of God is in the ways that we build up his people in the church. We sing hymns. God used poets and musicians to create those hymns. We read devotionals, works of theology, and encouraging biographies. God used writers, teachers, and historians to create those books. More broadly, Christians and non-believers have created works of culture that express true things about God, the nature of his creation, about human beings, and about good and evil. What are those true things that we should seek to discern in our surrounding cultures, praise when we find it, and cultivate in our own work? Well, that's something to think about as we pause here, and we'll pick up next time where we left off. Thanks for joining us for UC University Apologetics. Stay safe. See you later. See you soon.